told me one of these, like, I have a dream speech, but his dream was he wanted to chop somebody's head off on camera, so you could really sell that head. Never been done before.
This episode is brought to you by the best-selling book, Rise of the Film Entrepreneur, How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. Learn more at filmbizbook.com. I'd like to welcome to the show, Sean Cunningham. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've not only been a fan of that little movie you did back in the 80s with the guy, the person with the hacking and the stuff.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of that and what you did there. But I mean, when I was in a video store, I worked in a video store from pretty much 88 to 93. Many of your movies were on my shelves, from Deep Star 6 and I did so many movies, Spring Break, and many other ones that you directed and produced, which you've done a couple of. You've done a few things in the business, my friend. You've done a couple of things.
I've survived since the 80s.
Exactly. So my very first question to you is, how did you get in this business? How did you start? Because you started back in the, if I'm not mistaken, the early 70s producing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I was working on Broadway as a stage manager and thought, well, maybe I could produce something off Broadway. That would be better than just stage managing all the time. And I looked at that and I said, no, there's no way I would invest a nickel in an off-Broadway show, and let alone recommend it to my friends and family. So I was looking around to do something, and then I guess the long story short was that I said, well, if I were going to do a play, you get some actors, you get a script, get some costumes, you rehearse. Then when you finish, then it's done and you show it to people. So making a movie can't be much different than that.
Exactly. Just with a camera.
Right. And so that's really how it started. I made a sort of a the name used to be White Coater. An actor would come out in a white coat and say, in the interest of better marriages and interpersonal relationships, I'm going to show everybody how to fuck better.
Okay. Fair enough.
This was before there were any overt pornography, but it was a strange way to get started. But it spoke to the fact that I think one of my biggest assets is I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
So therefore, I didn't have these red lights saying, "Oh, you can't do that," or "That's crazy," or "What are you doing?" And I would just, just kept staggering forward. And what happened with this little movie is that, I need to get in a movie theater. So I got the Yellow Pages, which they had then, and went under movie theaters. And near the top of the listings was Brandt Theaters. Now, Bingo Brandt was in his day a legend. His family owned a whole bunch of property in New York, and they owned theaters on 42nd Street. And he was very kind, and he said, he looked at your movie, I'll play your movie, kid. And I said, great, how does that work? And he explained it to me, and a certain amount of money comes into the box office, and then after that, we split a 50-50. I said, okay, if that's how it works, fine. And he ran the damn movie. I think it ran for something like 27 weeks or something.
Holy
on
God.
the corner of 42nd Street and Broadway. And so, make no mistake, the movie was terrible. I mean, even looking at it kindly, it was terrible. But I had something that other people didn't have, is I was a producer of a hit movie. It had played, it got made for $1.50, and it played in Times Square, and it made a bunch of money compared to what it cost. And so that was basically the beginning for me.
And then, go ahead.
No, I was just that I had a background in theater and doing Broadway shows and Shakespeare and stuff like that. But what drove me when I first went in the film business and continued to drive me for a long time was not to fulfill, some great creative vision. I just wanted to make something and sell it for more than it cost to make it, because I had a family and kids and, all kinds of things. And so I was in the movie business to make a living. Now, that's not to say I didn't enjoy a whole bunch of different things and different kinds of movies and tried to figure it out. But at the end of the day, I think that was one of my guiding principles is, who's going to buy this and why?
And you know what? I'll tell you, that's so refreshing, because most filmmakers that go into the business go into it as an artist and not as a business person. And if you can find that combination of a businessman and an artist, or a business person and an artist, that's when you get real success. And it was really interesting that you came out as a producer first, correct? Before you started directing, and then you produced another little film with a young up and coming horror director, Wes something or other.
Yeah.
The Last House on the Left in 1972. You produced. Right. Was that his first film as a director?
Yes. Yes. It was. Wes and I met at 56 West 45th Street. He was working as a cab driver, and he was also syncing up documentary 16 millimeter film down the hall. And we needed someone to help in the editing room, and we became friends. And there came a time when some of these guys that I knew wanted to make a feature film for their drive-in theaters, and so they asked if we wanted to do it. And I said, "Yeah, I think so. Let's." I never made them. This is a movie, and Wes said, "Yeah, I'll write it," because he liked to write. It was one of his things, and so we got the script, which is kind of roughly inspired by Virgin Spring, and it had some this dreadful horrible twists in it, and we just it was like, man, being kids sneaking out at night and drawing graffiti on the walls, and nobody catches you. You go home and do it again. But that was and the picture was turned into sort of a cult film, but at its time it was so disturbing to people who saw it. They wanted to close the film down or lynch the people who made it, and it's true. And
I know it's 1972. I mean, it's
72 was when it was released. We made it in 71. And,
right.
And it was like, it really becomes, how do you do this? I remember it was shortly after Last House. I went to California to see people in the movies for the first time. And there was a company called American International Pictures. And I met this guy called Sam Arkoff, and he got me onto a few sets. And I came home with these stories, and it included, say, Wes, let me tell you about this. There's a job called script supervisor. Yeah. As far as we were concerned, that was somebody that just took a roll of tape, held it up to the camera, and gave, a clap to sync it up. Or if you had a cigarette, to know how long it was on a certain line. But not only was it a great idea, but I just didn't know that there was somebody that really did that job professionally, and how important that job turned out to be. But that's the kind of That's the kind of ignorance I was dealing with.
Well, and then also, I mean, back in the 70s, look, in the 80s, when I was coming up in the early 90s, there was barely any information about the filmmaking process in the public eye. I mean, you had to go to a film school. And even in the 70s, I mean, film schools were just starting to get off the ground with Coppola and those guys and Scorsese and them coming up, but there just wasn't a lot of information. Now everybody knows what a script supervisor. Everybody knows what, like, you know, you can make a movie with your iPhone, so it's so much more information out there about the process. I can only imagine you guys were just basically bumping around in the dark, essentially.
Yeah, and you know, and we survived. We're lucky to get by, and then we went on to whatever the next thing was going to be.
So then there was another movie that came out of California about this guy with a mask on who was killing people, and it was a huge hit. I remember it was called Halloween. It was called Halloween, and it was a big hit. And then was that the inspiration for you to start trying to figure out Friday the 13th?
In some ways, it was. I saw Halloween. Oh gosh, I don't remember. 6 months maybe before Friday the 13th, before I decided to do Friday the 13th, maybe 9 months, I don't know. But I thought that Carpenter made a terrific film. But what I really liked about it was that it was so small and so so personal. You know, Jamie Lee Curtis going around the dark house and some Steadicam stuff outside, and it just really worked. And so it's, you know, it said, you don't have to have these giant crews and do all this big stuff. We could make a small movie so long as there was a market for it, and maybe, you know, figure out how to make you know, a scary movie. You know, at this point, Last House was in my rear view mirror way back, and I didn't want to make some version of Last House again, and I made 2 children's films in the late 70s, which a lot of one was on baseball, the others on soccer. And I thought that was where my career was probably going. And the soccer movie it was okay, but it got optioned by United Artists. And so they wanted to make it into a TV series, and that was great, but it was going to take 6 to 9 months, or, you know, to roll around. So how am I going to raise money? What am I going to do to keep the machine going? And when I was working on the kids' soccer movie, one of the things you do is you try to come up with titles. This, you know, movie opens and nobody comes, better title, get a different title. And so you make lists of titles. And while I was one day making lists of titles, I said, Friday the 13th. Man, if I had a movie called Friday the 13th, I could sell that. You know, that was the entire thought. And so that, you know, cut to 6 months later, however long it was, it was around the 4th of July. And I said, let's try to make a scary movie. I want to call it Friday the 13th. And it was a question of, well, can you get the rights? And who knows what the rights are? And I said, well, yeah, I think so. So I took out a full-page ad in Variety, you know, Friday the 13th, crashing through mirrors and glass, the most terrifying film ever made, you know. And I figured if there was somebody that had the rights to that, they're going to respond. And a few weeks passed, I never heard word one from a lawyer. But I did hear from distributors who said, "Oh, I'd be interested in that, and I'd be interested in that." So we spent the rest of the summer trying to come up with a movie which was, okay, what's scary? What can you do that's like scary and be kind of fun? And Victor Miller, who I was working with at the time, you know, we said, well, what if it's sort of like you're a kid and you're in bed and you think that, there's somebody in the closet, and the kid's like, oh, right? Well, let's make a catalog of those things and see if we can include them in this sort of structure. So it was trying to find set pieces that seemed like they would go together, and just roughly, I mean, it was kind of 10 little Indians. You got a bunch of people in the woods dying and being killed. And so you in the audience say, oh, who's doing that? Well, not her. She's dead. Oh, he died too. So he gets smaller and smaller. And it wasn't that I had ideas of trying in some way to imitate John's film, Halloween. It was just that we had a small budget. We didn't have any stars. We didn't have any distribution or production plans, but figure, let's just try to make this thing and see if it works. And then we'll come back to the children's film in the spring.
So, so it seems to me that you guys were basically creating the template for this kind of horror movie, because I know John's had a high school that was a little bit bigger in scope than Friday the 13th. You, if I'm not mistaken, was the first movie which is like take a bunch of kids into the woods and kill them off one by one. I don't think there was.
Yes.
That's basically a template for a film now. Like
what? Yeah, and I would hasten to tell you, and anybody that happens to be listening, is that I think that there were so many shortcomings in Friday the 13th, and the film was grossly successsul, not because of those things that we did wrong, but in spite of them. So what happened was that, oh, look at all the money they made. All they did is take a bunch of kids in the woods, chop them up, and there you are. You have a movie. I think he killed 10 people. We'll kill 20. It'll be so much better. And the thinking isn't far off of that. But over time, forever and ever, I keep thinking the most important part of anything that we do like this is the story, and the story that you're going to tell. And it's very, very hard to come up with a good story well told. But that's where the money is. And if you can figure out how to do it or how to get a story, then you're off to a good start. And I think the people who write good screenplays get paid a ton of money. And the biggest reason is that so few people can do it, and it takes, it takes so long to learn that craft. And it's not just getting a copy final drafts and start typing. See, it's different than that. So I think that, my advice is, three most important things in a movie are story, and story,
without question. And when you're out there making this, again, it sounds like you guys were just literally bumping around the night, no pun intended.
Oh, yeah.
While you're making Friday the 13th. And, you've got a bunch of young kids. One of them happened to be a young Kevin Bacon, which is, I always find fascinating. He'd done I think he'd done Animal House. He was in Animal House prior to that. And I'm sure he was just happy to get a job at that point. He wasn't,
I'm sure.
He wasn't footloose just yet.
Not yet. No.
He wasn't footloose. Great, a great kill, if you will, if you're going to say kills, in that film. And so you decided to go make this movie. You're starting to cast. Who gives you money for this kind of film that is not, other than Halloween, been a financial success yet? Because it came out pretty soon right after Halloween, within a year or two, right?
Yes.
Within a couple of years. So Halloween's the only one that's done, like, broke the, kind of opened the door open about it and said, hey, there's a market here. Who's crazy enough to give you the money to make this right now?
What happened was that John's Halloween was a really good movie, but it was in the days of you used to go to a Cincinnati and you'd have 10 prints in the back of your car,
right?
And you take out some new newspaper ads and put up posters in the lobby and see if people came. You might have radio ads. You're trying to figure out how to do it. And if it works okay in Cincinnati and you get your 10 prints, or then hopefully 20 prints, you go on to the next market, and now you've refined your sales strategy, and you go to another market. But you never opened wide. That was really never done. The first picture to open really wide, in I think it was 800 theaters at once, was Jaws.
Right.
And when it came time to figure out what are we going to do with Friday the 13th, I'll back up and tell you that the money for Friday the 13th came primarily from owners of theaters and drive-ins. And we had worked on some other little things before, and I wasn't ever sure if I really wanted to get back into bed with these guys. But I said, what the hell? We'll make a movie and just do it. And so they had relationships with Frank Mancuso at Paramount. And we took it to Paramount, and Paramount, the executives, for reasons I can't understand, they just loved it. And then what they wanted us to do is schedule a second screening, and then bring all the secretaries that they could and kids that they could into the screening and wait for the ending, and the popcorn would go flying and they'd laugh. And it was and Mancuso at that point was head of distribution, I believe, at Paramount, and he decided he's going to take this little movie with the name Friday the 13th and no stars and no apparent story to push, and open it nationally. And it was like, okay, hold on to your seats. Because if this had failed, he might have lost his job. It was one of those like all in moments for him. And as it turned out, he was absolutely right. And he went on to become president of Paramount and do other things. But
if I remember the release of going back and studying the release of Friday the 13th, it was released widely, but the trailer for it you just were basically selling the title, and there's some kills, and that was essentially, it wasn't a story plot. It wasn't.
Right.
It was just like, it's called Friday the 13th, the most terrifying day in the calendar. Next to Halloween, if not probably scarier than Halloween, because it's not a
what I have found is it has universal psychic real estate. People just carry around this thing about Friday the 13th and bad luck, and it transcends almost all cultures, because every culture, they may not call it Friday the 13th, but they have a day of the year, which is predicated on don't walk under any ladders and that kind of thing.
Right. But, it's all kind of bad luck stuff.
Yeah, I know.
And now going back a little bit though, when you came up with the characters, were you writing? I know you didn't write the characters.
I mean, Victor Miller and I and Steve Miner and Tom Savini, we were sort of, Victor and I first had this notion of, like 10 little Indians happening at a summer camp. And Steve was going to be the line producer, and we were trying to figure out how to get a special effects guy. And there's this guy in Pittsburgh, Savini. Can we try to find him, track him down and stuff? And we did, and he got in his car with his friend Tasso and came up to Connecticut, and he was so excited and so psyched to do this. And so we're all just working with, you've got a kid in the woods and he dies. Okay, what happened there? How do you make it scary? And how do you shoot it? And none of it could have been done. But, all four of us really combined to make it happen.
What did Tom do prior to that? Like, there wasn't a lot of
he did
stuff going
Night
on.
of the Living Dead.
Oh, that's right. The original.
the original. And I
Oh,
think
the
that was his, I
original
think that was
George.
his only, that was his only credit, which is, you may recall,
It's a
is in
pretty good
black and
credit.
white. And
Right.
yeah, well, now it's a really good credit. At the time,
What's this thing?
yeah, what the hell is this? I want to see Sound of Music, and I am in here. Um,
So he was
but
just a young kid who's super excited about makeup. And I
right,
think that's the movie that essentially launched his career. After
yes,
that,
it
he was
was
a
for
very,
sure.
very busy man in the 80s.
Oh, he continues to this day. He studied with a guy named, I believe his name, oh God, I want to say Dick Clark.
Rick
Uh,
Baker.
Rick Baker, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he really knew how to do prosthetics and all that kind of stuff, and he wanted to do it. And he, he told me one of these, like, I have a dream speech, but his dream was he wanted to chop somebody's head off on camera, so you could really sell that. Had never been done before. And
Really?
yeah. And so we figured out that, very carefully, the staging, the blocking for how we could chop Betsy Palmer's head off.
I mean, you essentially ushered in the slasher as we know it, to a certain
Yeah.
extent. Helped it along without question. And I think it was after Friday the 13th, that's when there was a couple of copycat, uh, just a couple of copycat films. Chopping Wall,
Chopping wall.
Slaughterhouse, or
How do
Slaughter
you know all
Party.
that shit? How do you?
Chopping Mall, genius. Absolutely. I watched the trailer the other day. I was like, what? Because I remember it in I remember it in the video store. I used to rent all this stuff, and people would come in, and Friday the 13th, we're all up there, all 450 versions of that eventually came out. And then, obviously Freddy and all these kind of, but that decade is where all of the characters that we, horror lovers love, like the Freddys, the Jasons, the Michael Myers, and then they started to go from there. But those are the originals that came out of that whole thing. Now, look, as a director, we always have a day that we feel like the entire world is coming crashing down around us. And that we're not, I mean, that's generally every day. But there's always that one day in the project that you're like, oh my God, I don't know if we're going to make it here. Like, I can't get my day done, or the camera falls into the lake, or prosthetic isn't working.
Right.
What was that day? Did you have any of those days on Friday the 13th? And how did you overcome them?
I think every filmmaker has that day. I mean, there may be worse days, but the oh my God, it'll never work again day.
Right.
Which is, you thought this movie was going to be just going to work so well, and you've got as tight as you can, and then you show it to an audience. You're sitting in the audience, and they're getting ahead of you, and it's not working for this audience. And oh, why'd I leave that in? I should have cut it out. Oh, what am I going to do? And then that's sort of like day one, and then you recut and try to come up with the movie that represents what you were doing. But
so for you, it was in post.
There's always that screening. That screening doesn't necessarily have to be in front of a paying audience. It can be for a studio. It can be for a focus group. But it's you're sitting there with strangers who have nothing invested in the movie, and they're going, "Oh, man, what the hell is that? That's stupid."
Was that ending always there?
No. The ending was something that one of my investors wanted to try, and it just seems so stupid. And I mean, this is a reality-based 10 Little Indians thing, and I said, I get it, but I don't know how we can insert it into the movie, because as it was conceived is she's just there, and the thing that was scripted was everything with her on the lake and the police arriving and everything. And then just, I don't know where this creature comes up out of the bottom and grabs her.
It sounds horrible, by the way. As you're explaining it sounds like a horrible idea.
And it was. And I said I couldn't shoot it until we figured out what would follow it. What's the epilogue, the coda? You can't just end the movie with a punch in the stomach like that. It's, no explanations or anything. And once we got there's a little epilogue with Alice in the hospital bed and dreaming about the things that happened. Did it happen? Did it not happen? And stuff like that. Once you had that, okay, now we have at least a place where it could go. It might be understood. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it wasn't. And same time, Savini just grabbed a hold of that, and he just he came up with this deformed creature, and it had to work underwater and had to do all those different things, and he he created that that creature, that 12-year-old boy or whatever it was.
Mhm.
Ari Lehman. I'll tell you a story. My son Noel was supposed to play that role. He was supposed to be Jason in the lake, until his mother found out. Says, "You are not taking my son and putting him in the ice cold water. That's crazy. You get somebody else." And so that's that's how he that's how he lost the part. He could have had it.
I'm sure, and I'm sure I'm sure he's given mom some hell over the years over that.
Oh, over the years, yeah. But at the time, it was like, oh, good, I don't have to do it. Jesus, that water is so cold.
I mean, he could be signing in conventions right now.
Oh yeah.
So with that's one thing that always, it's one of those trivia questions is like, who is the killer in the first Friday the 13th? And the wrong answer is Jason, because everyone always says Jason is Jason's mom. But it's one of those lovely questions. Now, also, I'm sure you've seen Scream at this point in your life, at Wes's Scream, and a lot of those rules that he put in the movie, or Kevin Williamson, who wrote it, put in the movie about don't have sex, don't say I'll be right back.
All the horror tropes, yeah.
All the tropes. Many of those started in Friday the 13th. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Some of them did. I mean, it's, you got 10 kids in the woods and you're going to chop them up. Okay.
What are they going to do?
Yeah. And it's, but I think one of the things that happened is that people started to impose a morality on top of it. Like, the loose girl and the potheads. Well, they've got to go, because they're obviously the bad people, or who are not behaving well. It's a cautionary tale. So we're going to really be rooting for this one girl, but we're going to kill the others because they're so irresponsible. And that just makes a bad situation just that much worse. It's just a bad idea. And I think that the underlying scary part of Friday the 13th and things that followed it, I think it came from Jaws. That there's a shot in Jaws, I don't know, about halfway through the movie, and they've opened the beaches and it's sunny. I don't know, it's 4th of July or something. And there's a shot of the shark going down, and he's looking up, and he sees nothing but legs, and they're old people and young people and women and men, and he's gonna just eat somebody, and it really depends how hungry he is. It has nothing to do with, I'm going to eat, I'm going to eat that dope smoking jerk, or I'm going to get that tramp or something. No, it can happen to anybody at any time for reasons which are completely beyond our control. And knowing, I think that's a core belief that we all have. And we have this cognitive dissonance, because what we do on a daily basis is deny that anything really bad could happen to us. And on the other hand, there's a part of us that knows it could happen at any moment, the rational versus the irrational, and we're hardwired to ignore it. But nevertheless, it's in there. And it's the dynamic of fairy tales, where you look at something that is true or could be true, and it's really scary. So you freeze up. But when you see it in the safety of a movie theater, or, somebody telling you a story about once upon a time, you get to be exposed to your father dying, or, being abandoned by your parents, or whatever it is that might happen. And you see it so many times. And as you see it, you get a little bit number and a little bit number to the thing that was really so scary to you in the first place. And in a way, it's establishing value systems, and it's a way of teaching you to deal with, or saying that there are tough things you have to deal with in life, and you can do it. Then, and I think that's my understanding about how horror films have, a lot of them were, at their core, they were fairy tales that were adapted.
It's cathartic. It's cathartic.
Catharsis. And there's a book by a guy named Bruno Bettelheim, which called The Uses of Enchantment, which really opened my eyes to this. And it's, anyway, that's
no, but you actually answered a question that I was about to ask, which was, why do you think these films have lasted the test of time? Characters like Jason and Freddy and Michael, that we just keep coming back to these monsters, even Jaws, and those kind of. What was about them? What are about these films that people keep watching them, not only again and again, but keep, like, I mean, obviously from Friday the 13th, there was maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 big horror movies. I mean, obviously The Exorcist and all those kind of movies, which were different, but in the slasher genre, it just kept growing and growing. What is it about that genre of horror that people just kept going back to, and in many ways having fun with? Because originally, if I remember, Freddy was terrifying, but then Freddy turned into a comedy routine with some gore eventually. Right. And Jason did too, for that matter.
I think what happened, I don't think people keep going back to horror films because of their horror films. They go back to experience, why does a kid say, no, read me the story again from the beginning. And don't change it because, he doesn't like it when you change it. But, from the beginning, I think that some strange things happened to Jason and to Freddy and Michael Myers, I think. But you saw particularly with Jason and Freddy is you went to the movie for whatever reasons. It's going on a roller coaster. It's like, oh my God, oh my God. And, and it becomes kind of a fun, crazy event. And then there's another, and then you start saying, okay, we're gonna have a softball game, Friday the 13th. We're gonna have a softball game. We're gonna choose up sides. Okay, I got the big guy with the mask. Who do you got?
The big guy with the mask who doesn't die. That guy.
Right. He'll be on my side. Yeah, you can have those 4 football players, no problem. And I think that there's something in the transformation of this, call it Jason
slasher, right?
Yeah, kind of, and that is that it's kind of revenge of the nerds on steroids. So much of the audience feels like they weren't allowed to sit at the cool kids' lunch table.
Oh, and all the cool kids are the ones dying.
Do you notice that? And the same, by the way, same thing happens in Living Dead, where you can shoot the principal of the school if he's got that look in his eye, And there's kind of I think that nobody's ever said that one for one, but I think that's the thing that happens. And so if you're going to go out and experience that, now it's sort of predictable, like a roller coaster ride, where there are going to be things that are scary and bloody and gory, but you can't scare me. Not only that, because I got the big guy on my side.
Right.
But people that, you know, if you go to a roller coaster ride in Six Flags or someplace, there are going to be a lot of people get on the roller coaster. There's a whole bunch of people sitting on the bench. They don't want to get on the roller coaster, and they're never going to get on the roller coaster. And so that this experience is not for everyone. You can't make it for everyone. You're crazy if you think you can, because you can't. There are people that like the roller coasters and people that don't. And liking the roller coaster has to do with those moments where you have no control and you think that you're in enormous jeopardy, but at the same time you're strapped in and there are bars and harnesses and stuff, but still there's that moment. And and then if you're like a fan, you start putting your arms up in the air. Hey, I'm not afraid of anything. But I don't know.
I understand. No, but I understand where you're coming from completely. You're absolutely right. I've never thought of it that way, but that makes so much sense because in a lot of those movies, I don't remember. It might have happened, but I don't remember them killing the nerds. It's always, the beautiful girl, the big jock, those people that the cool kids are the ones that go first. And I don't remember many nerds getting knocked out because you're like,
well, yeah,
it's the equivalent of kicking the dog. Like you don't do that. You can't kick a dog. You can't kick a dog in the movie because that's the villain. No, I do want to ask you. I do want to ask you, Sean. After the movie comes out, it's a huge hit. It is one of these, biggest independent films of its day. I'm assuming you get a few phone calls.
Yeah.
And how did the town treat you? And why didn't you keep going down that road? As a filmmaker, because you didn't do the second or third or fourth or any other Jason movie. Why didn't you go down that road where others have? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, if it were to happen again tomorrow, I would definitely, ordered my business life differently. But I didn't, Friday the 13th was you took a bunch of kids in the wood and you chopped them up. I didn't want to do that every year and, find, better machetes. And I wasn't what I wanted to do. Friday the 13th I was naive enough, like I said, my education took a long time, to think that, they said, "Oh, Sean, you made a really, really terrific hit movie and we'd love to meet with you." And then it would always come around to, "So what do you want to do next?" Now, I thought,
here it comes.
I thought that the guy sitting behind the desk has got a whole filing cabinet full of great scripts. He just hasn't found the right director. And he said, "What do you want to do next?" And my answer was kind of, "I don't know. What do you got?" The only thing that the guy sitting behind the desk wants to hear is, "I'd like to do Friday the 13th every year until I die," and I could have signed up at that point. I had no idea
Wow.
that was, I thought of Friday the 13th as a sample reel kind of. See, I can direct. You got anything else?
Now let me go make real movies in your eyes.
Something like that. Yeah. And I'm going to have a script supervisor this time, damn it.
I hear they're important. It's fascinating because I've had a lot of people on my show over the years who had these kind of like lottery ticket moments. I mean, you were one of you and John and Wes, you had these kind of lottery ticket moments where you had extremely massive hits.
Mm-hmm.
And how I've seen a lot of them just go a different direction because like I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. And every one of them said, "If I would have known now, if I would have known then what I know now,
yeah,
I would have done at least 3 or 4 more, and then retire."
Yeah, well, yeah,
but you had a hell of a run in the 80s as well.
Yeah, I got a lot. I got to make a lot of movies, and
Yeah.
And the challenge of making any movie is, it's like climbing a mountain. You
Oh,
get
God.
together with a bunch of people and you try to do this thing that's really hard, separate from the content. It's just making a movie is just really hard. It's really hard work, and you meet and bond with a bunch of people. And making movies is the fun part of whatever we do. The rest of the time is spent trying to get the movies made, and that
Or get
goes
sold
around.
or sold.
Yeah. I would. I know that a number of your viewers are probably film students or people relatively new to the business, and you talked about going to film school and so on. What nobody ever tells a film student is you go and you learn about the cameras and you learn it, but now you learn about certain kinds of media and you learn how to make and do all this great stuff. But there are no jobs for you. None. Nobody's going to hire you to do that. If you really want to do that, what you have to do is, along with everything else you've been doing, is learn how to raise money. And it's very difficult. And until you get a handle on that, you're going around, with a script under your arm, trying to get somebody to give you enough money or to make it for you. And it doesn't happen. It only happens if you find a way, and yet being a type A personality is critical, I think. You've got to go out and find a way to get enough money to make it. And if it's $5,000, you take your iPod and you go out, or your iPad, and you go out and shoot it and do the best you can, come back and make another one next week, and the week after that, and week after that, because that's the only way you're going to learn how to do it. And nobody's going to give you the money to do it. You have to find, and by the way, everybody gets money different ways, different places, different times.
Oh,
but that's one of the things that they don't teach in film school. And it's a critical lesson. And, you probably more than I, but see a lot of people that are talented and they've got great footage and they can't get hired. They can't break in. But there isn't a way to break it. There isn't an apprenticeship.
Not for directors is tough. For other parts, camera department, art department, yes.
But those, that's a completely other thing. Yeah, and if you have the right bloodlines or the right genes, you can be a dolly grip too. But I'm talking about the people that you go to film school. You don't go to film school to be a grip. You go to be filmmaker, a storyteller, and stuff like that. And that's what you have to keep doing. But you're going to be on your own for a long time trying to do that. And if you know that going in, it's better than if you don't.
It's really, and I appreciate that, because that's a very wise piece of information there, because I've come to understand, I heard this the other day and I thought this was fantastic and it so perfectly defines our industry, which is, it is possible for anyone to direct a movie, but it's not probable.
Okay.
Because he's like, there's so much work that goes, because at the beginning, everyone can make a movie. Like, oh, it's possible. Yeah. And now more than ever, more than in your day was much harder to get a movie off the ground. Now you could go make a movie for $3 or $5 grand, and you can. But the probability of that happening is very small, because the amount of work, things have to line up, things have to fall into place. You have to be the perseverance, years, like you said, to get things done. And, I've been in the business now closing in on 30 years. And that is really the definition of our business, because it's possible? Yes, that's what Hollywood sells. Anyone could be a star. Anyone could be a director. Anyone could write $1 million script.
Don't forget, and nobody knows anything.
And nobody knows anything, but you can win. But the probability of you selling a script for $1 million How many scripts get sold for $1 million?
Right.
A handful. How many filmmakers make a studio movie? Now, none. Very few young filmmakers make them. It's very small. So I just thought that was such an interesting, and it's a tough pill to swallow, but it is the truth of our business. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, not anyone can, but most people, could get it together to get a movie made somehow. Not likely, like you said, it's just not probable, but it's a lot of work, and it has nothing to do with what you learned when you studied making movies. It's an integral part of making movies that's just ignored. Thinking about a few things that when I talk to people about the movies, I stay away from the technical issues because, well, I don't know them as well as all the people that do them every day. But it seems to me that there are a few really important things. One is I'm going to refer to something called, you ready? The poster, or back in the day we called it the one sheet, but today it might be the billboard on Sunset Boulevard,
or the thumbnail in Netflix,
or the thumbnail. So, what is the thumbnail for your movie? And because what is contained in there, if it's done right, is the promise of what the movie is. So from day one, what you've promised the audience, and then you have to deliver on that. But you have to keep coming back to it. You don't think about it later. If you think about this, I read the script and the pages, they just, took all my emotional energy, and I just couldn't stop reading it. Okay, what's the poster? How are you going to get people in it? Because what you're doing, for all intents and purposes, is you're making this thing, and then you're stopping strangers on the street and saying, wait, come with me, please. I want to show you something. And it's a movie, and I promise you're really going to like it. Please come with me. And you try to get them, and you pull them in, you put them in the seat, and you say, and that'll be $15. Right? And then the guy has to sit there for the next 2 hours of his life and leave happy. And that's what we do. And if he doesn't leave happy, you don't get a chance to do it again, or not very soon. And so I think that's knowing what the poster is and embracing the fact that you have an audience that is vital to what we do for a living. The other thing that I think gets lost, and that's, who do you make a movie for? Who's your audience? And I think the way to approach it is you're creating a gift for somebody. And it's not for you to find yourself and to work out your anxieties and work out all
that's an art
stuff.
film. That's an art film, and that's the
That's
French New Wave.
film. But even with an art film, you're making it for somebody else, and you want it to be good, and you want to be able to give it to this other person or people, and they're going to be glad that they got it, and they'll react to the fact that you really did the best you could to create this gift for them. And that's what you're doing if you're doing it right. And I know those aren't words you hear very often, but I think they're really critical.
Those are fantastic. I mean, those words. I mean, I've been yelling both of those things from the top of the mountain for quite some time now, Sean. It is something that's so important, and filmmakers, they don't think about it. They don't think about the poster. They don't think about the marketing. They don't think how they're going to sell it, and they definitely don't think about the audience. They just think about, I want to make this movie. I want to put this out there. But if you don't think of who this is for, this is an expensive art, man. This is not paint on canvas. This is not writing a book. No. This is an expensive art that takes a lot of time, a lot of collaboration, a lot of things to fall into place for it to be done, period, let alone well. Because there's a lot of movies made. And then there's this many that are really good and stand the test of time for whatever the reason is. And it is, I appreciate you saying that and it coming out of your mouth. Hopefully people listening will listen.
Well, they hear it once anyway. Maybe.
But it's interesting, but it's something that needs to be, especially for younger filmmakers or first-time filmmakers, they don't understand that. I wrote a whole book about that, about like understand your niche audience, understand your audience and build a product for that audience, build that thing that serve them and really connect with them. And it is something that is not talked about very often. So I do appreciate you saying that. Now, there is one question I've always wanted to ask. I have to ask this. I need you to get ready.
No offense, Charlie.
No offense. No, it's not. No, it's not that kind of answer. That's not that question. But I've always wanted to ask this question because you do go to cons, and you go and you sign at cons, and I've been to many. I've signed at some cons. I've experienced it myself, and I've gone to horror conventions earlier when I had one of my first films, and I met a lot of your contemporaries and all that stuff. When you first got called, they say, "Hey, Sean, we want to bring you over to a comic book convention or a horror convention to sign." What did you think? You're like, what do you?
I tell you exactly. I'll tell you exactly what I thought. Are you out of your fucking mind?
You want me?
Yeah, well, I wasn't. It's like that's if you hit 62 home runs in a baseball season, okay, go sign up baseball.
Right.
But I'm just a guy, and to charge somebody for signing something seems crazy, and so I didn't do it, and I still do not many, but I really enjoy it because I get to better understand people that are fans of the genre, and you get it's really kind of good for your it's good to be reminded of the people that are out there, and that they're often really nice people.
Oh, they're comic book and horror. They're such sweet people. Most of them I've ever met.
And Wes referred to them as wearing urban camouflage. Yeah, they don't, they don't want to stick out, and they want to be with people that share their values and their sense of fun and entertainment. But there's kind of a uniform, so that if you are one of them, he's our kind of people, and you learn that. And I like interacting with the fans, and it means so much more to them than it does to me.
Right. No, I understand. That completely.
And so the notion of selling your signature just strikes me as goofy.
It is a little goofy, and I remember I was at I think the San Diego Comic-Con, and I went to talk to an actor, and I won't say the name because I'm still a fan, but he was just sitting at a booth by himself. It wasn't even an autograph scenario, and I had a statue of one of the characters he played. This is years ago, and I go, "Hey, can you sign this?" And he's like, "If you want it dedicated, it's $275. If you want it non-dedicated, it's $450." And I'm like, I'm just a fan, man. I'm not selling this. I'm just a fan. He's like, "Yeah, that's the price." I'm like, wow. Okay. So there's a dark side to this as well sometimes, but it wasn't even, he was just sitting in the corner by himself, like not even in an autograph scenario, but it was interesting. It's such an interesting, there's been documentaries on cons and that whole subculture and stuff, but I always wanted to ask someone like yourself, what did you think when they first asked you to sign something and get paid for it?
Yeah, it just seemed,
Loony.
yeah,
My name is not Mickey Mantle or Tom Cruise.
right. You know, it's like, do you remember? I thought, remember those? There's a TV show where you Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
And you get
the
it's like tic-tac-toe, but right, and there are individual personalities in each of the boxes, right? And most of them were famous for being famous, not because they did anything. You know, what was O.J. Simpson's houseboy, Kato Kalin? He became famous for living in the guest house.
You want to hear a funny side note? When I moved to LA, my second home was a townhome in Toluca Lake, and I lived across the way from Kato Kalin. He's a very sweet guy.
Yeah, and you went straight to the top.
I mean, I was there, baby. I arrived
right in the middle of it.
Now I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask all my guests, Sean. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
The smart answer is don't quit your day job. But I think that what this has become is something that you love to do. And this has to do with acting or directing or any number of different things. And it's quite possible, as you say, to do this with the very limited resources that we have at our fingertips, and do it and enjoy it. But do that in the same way that you might enjoy, I don't know, playing softball with the guys over the weekend. You know, it's something that you can love and enjoy and be fine. How you can do this thing that would then allow you to support yourself doing it is just, it's possible, but it's not probable. You know, now there are going to be people who say, yeah, whatever. All right. What else?
That's not me. That's not me.
Right. What else you got? And I'd say, well, story. And, you know, if you can either write or find somebody that really knows how to write well, and then tell stories. Don't think that what you're going to do is get it the first time out or the second or the third. So what you have to do is you have to keep making mistakes. And that's how you learn anything. Is you go out, you try something, seems like a good idea at the time, you fall down, doesn't work, you get up and do it again. And the amount of time it takes, they throw around 10,000 hours, and that's not very long. But to convert the 10,000 hours that I think it takes to even have your ante in the game as say a writer, you can't go to, you know, Robert McKee over the seminar weekend and then come home and write the great screenplay. You just can't. You get good guidance, but you just can't do that. But you have to, if 10,000 hours is, let's just say you don't know anything about carpentry. You know, you've looked at cabinets your whole life. You know exactly what cabinets look like, but you don't know how to make them. So you apprentice yourself to a master carpenter, and he teaches you, and you work really hard, 5 days a week, and Christmas off. And after 4 to 5 years, depending, you will have put in your 10,000 hours. And at that point, maybe you can make one of those finely fitted cabinets and know how to stain it. Because that's all you've been doing for the last 5 years. And it's only 5 years. I mean, if you did that when you were 17 or 18 years old, you come out at the age of 23 as a fine cabinet maker. And then you keep building on that. But there's a great deal of time and effort that has to be put into learning the craft. The art comes at the end. And, you know, 90% of what we do is a craft. And it's like any other craft. It has to be studied and learned, and you have to do the heavy lifting, and you can't start as a star.
But that's what the film schools teach you. You're a star, kid.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate. Did you ever see the documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
No.
It was an award-winning documentary about this master sushi maker in Japan. Like he's the only sushi maker to ever win a Michelin star, ever. And when you apprentice with him, it's a 10-year commitment. The first 4 years, you don't touch fish. It's all rice. All you do is cook rice for 4 years. So you learn how to cook rice properly. And then you begin to start touching fish after 4 years. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it's oh gosh.
It was such a brilliant, but it's such a great thing. It's like, if you want to be a cinematographer, you just want to get on set and start moving lights around and start moving the camera. I'm like, no, you've got to learn so much technical knowledge.
And you only learn it by doing it.
Absolutely. You can't read about it. You can't watch about it.
And I think that, yeah, and if you want to make a career out of it, what you must do is sell a movie for more than it costs you to make.
Every time. Roger Corman style.
And that way you get to make another movie. And that seems overly simplified, but that's got to be at the core of what you're doing if you're trying to make a career out of it. But you don't have to. You can get yourself a camera and a microphone and go shoot whatever you want and play with it and come up with all kinds of things, show it to your friends, go to film festivals, all that stuff. And you can, certain people will come out with, I don't know if it's going to be great art, but it could be really good stuff.
Right.
But they're not trying to make a living doing that. You've got to have your day job or marry very well. But,
That's amazing. Great advice. I've had that. That's some advice I've had. And like, I talked to one director and he said, I go, what's the advice you give filmmakers? Marry well. That's what I, that's what I did. And my wife helps me pay for all of my movies. So now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
For me, it's not learning, but it's one of those things you try to do. You try to do the right thing. You don't always do the right thing. And nobody goes through life without making mistakes and having regrets, but you stay on the road and you do the next right thing. Whatever you did yesterday is yesterday.
So good.
And that's a lesson to be learned every day, but that's what you try to do.
And last question, 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Oh, so they go all over the place, but I would say Love Actually.
So good.
The Lion King, and in genres, I remember seeing The Alien, the Ridley Scott original, and that was just so good at what he did. He was trying, and he just all of those were for me home runs.
I can't disagree with any of those choices, sir.
Right.
They're all excellent choices. Sean, I appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been such a pleasure and honor talking to you about.
You're very nice to say that. I hope you got some.
We got something. I think we got a couple of gold nuggets in here.
You can probably trim this down to a nice, tight 7 or 8 minutes. And
I appreciate
it's really gonna, and some music, a few sound effects,
and obviously, and a good kill, and then we're good. Then I could sell it.
Then you can sell it.
Sean, I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for everything.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'll talk again, I'm sure.